coming a little bit later than I was hoping because I've just been sick, sore throat, lots of coughing, and I don't know if I can tell, but my voice is really hoarse, so I was really hoping my voice would come back, but it hasn't quite. I still have a little bit of cough. I'm getting better, but I didn't want to fall off of filming, even though it's gonna sound terrible. So maybe I'll do a re-recording at some point, but for now I'm just gonna deal with my voice, and I'm sorry. So day 10 of the unofficial month of Super Sentai and the 25th season, 2001, and that was Yakuju Sentai Gaoranger. So I felt like I really didn't have a lot to say about this season, and I think it'll become apparent when I get to, the things I liked and the things that threw me off guard. Some of the things I liked, I did feel like it had a better balance amongst the characters. All the characters felt important. All the characters had their own backstory. It didn't feel too centered on one particular ranger, kind of like in Power Rangers Wild Force with the Red Ranger. And I think, I'll get further explanation into that when I get to the things that threw me off. So this kind of threw me off at first, but I'm going to put this underneath the things that I liked category. Throughout the majority of the season, like literally the 49 or 50 out of the 51 episodes, they did not reveal each other's identities to each other. They only referred to each other by each other's color. But I felt like despite that, they all had this friendly bond with each other. When they did do episodes that focused on their backstory, that kind of gave light to who they were. It was a pretty interesting way to do it, because all the other Rangers were fighting about a certain character's backstory, like where they came from, who they know, but they don't even know their name. And I think they might have gotten a sense of their name, and they might have been name dropped by some of the people they were interacting with, because they didn't know they were hiding their identities. That was a pretty fun way to go about their backstories. It is pretty interesting, and I'm not too surprised that they decided to try to match their name to their animal. For instance, Gao Red, his last name is Shishi, which means lion. Gao Yellow is Washio, which means eagle. Gao Blue has the surname Samezu, or I think Same in Samezu means shark. And then there's Gao Black, whose surname is Ushigome. I think Ushi is like bull or cow, but they'll, it's in the same family as a bison, so maybe that's where the Gome part is. I don't know. And then Gao White, literally the last name is Taiga. And then Gao Silver is Oogami, which is a wolf. Kind of a fun way to continue honing my Japanese, I guess. So into the things that threw me off, and it's really just one big thing with a few small things underneath it that threw me off, and that's pretty much why I really don't have a lot to say about this season, or at least as someone who's only watched it once. And that is, as someone who watched Power Rangers Wild Force first, because that's what I grew up with, and then seeing Gaoranger, it was just really, really, really similar. Like, I know I brought it up when I was talking about Time Ranger, but it's even more so than Time Ranger's adaptation. Because Time Ranger had a few small tweaks. It didn't have like a big thing that differentiated it the same way the seasons before it did, but it made a few small tweaks where it felt different enough. With this, I didn't really get a sense of the difference. So other than the things that make Power Rangers, like the Battleizer, the Time Force, and Wild Force team up crossover episodes. That was unique to the Wild Force because since this was the 25th anniversary year, they actually didn't have the team up with the previous season. They had a Gaoranger versus Super Sentai, and that kind of goes through the history of Super Sentai. Given that this was a 25th anniversary season, but then, Wild Force had Forever Red, which was the 10th anniversary season. And they also had their own sort of weapon, but it's not a major thing. All that being said, even the character backstories were just really similar. I mean, White was in school. Yellow was a former pilot who went missing and was rescued by the Yellow Eagle. Black was Black was like a florist before, but I think but to be fair, I think in Gaoranger, before he became a florist, because he, fell for some girl, he was actually like into sumo wrestling, but had to drop out. Blue, I'm trying to remember what was up with Blue, but I remember they were both vital in that, like the bowling monster episode. Silver were both formerly evil because of a mask, and then, they had Zenaku. Okay, the name wasn't Zenaku, it was Roki, but, they still had that same possessed by a wolf mask demon thing and all that stuff. Even the way it ended was the same, where all the crystals get destroyed, and then, in endgame fashion, they all show up at the end with a bunch of other, the power crystal orbs, and, they blast the villain, the main big villain at the end. So all of it was really, really familiar. I don't think it was bad. It's just, as someone who grew up watching Power Rangers already, and, the way they adapted Power Rangers, it was just already too close. The thing that Power Rangers did have going for it, other than its usual thing like the Battleizer, the team up episode, and the Forever Red special, was they did do something with the Red Ranger's character backstory, where he was trying to find his parents, but then, and it was connected to the villain of that season, and he was human, became an org, and all that stuff. That was actually pretty good on Power Rangers' part, but that was like the only real big difference that I saw, or at least on this first run through. It was a very solid season. It's just, as someone who grew up watching Power Rangers Wild Force first, it was all very familiar. Despite that, I still have a favorite episode, or quest, and that was Quest 34, The Mighty Org Weeps. And, fair warning, it's another episode where a monster doesn't want to be bad. A monster doesn't want to be a monster, but it wants to do good. I think the reason why this one stood out to me, other than the fact that I was probably going through something at that time, was that this one was like really done emotionally. Like the way it was shot, the music, and just everyone's reactions, and especially what this monster covered, or what this monster did, just kind of, it tugged at my heartstrings a little bit. So this monster was the charcoal grill org, and it would burn everything around it, and it found out that being an org, it only wanted to be angry and destroy, burn everything around it. But then one time he did burn everything, and I think this was, according to the episode, it was like around post-war Japan, or maybe it was before the war. Anyway, it was like early 1900s. It burned everything around it, but then it ended up grilling some food, and kids found it and they ate it and they really liked it. And when the monster saw that, it had a change of heart. It didn't want to destroy anymore. It wanted to create. It wanted to make good food. It wanted to make people smile with food. But then, in typical villain fashion, villains try to bring the org back, but it doesn't want to. They managed to take control of him, and he's going crazy, and the Rangers had to put him out of his misery. And everyone feels it, especially Gao Yellow and Gao Black. Unlike in the Gaoranger episode that I mentioned that I like, which is kind of similar to this in that, there's a monster that doesn't necessarily want to do bad or has a different agenda. This one, something about this one, it matched and touched everybody, and it was very heartfelt. And then just the way it ends, where they're kind of reflecting on the life and passing of this org that they didn't get to know for very long. That, they're hoping that he's making good food for people in heaven. And then, there's a food cart passes by with someone who looks like the human form of that org making oden or Japanese soup, which sounds pretty good right about now for a kid. It's like, today's daikon radishes are good today, or something like that. As someone who just recently started working in food and looking back on this episode, it reminded me of why I want to do stuff with food and try to make people happy and smile through food. And this episode just managed to touch both my heart and my stomach.